Everybody ready? Hi, I'm Christy Shane, Director of Communications for the South Carolina Department of Corrections. HRYSTISHAIN. The capital punishment sentence of Marion Bowman Jr. was carried out tonight, pursuant to the order of the South Carolina Supreme Court and in accordance with state law. The execution began at 6:04 p.m. He was pronounced dead by a physician at 6:27 p.m. Bowman was sentenced to death for murder and arson in the February 16, 2001 death of 21-year-old Candy Louise Martin in Dorchester County. Bowman shot Martin, stuffed her in the trunk of her car, and then set the car on fire. Bowman's last statement was read to witnesses by his attorney. It was lengthy and includes a poem. I have copies for you. It will also be posted on our website. Witnesses to the execution included Bowman's attorney, a representative of the prosecuting solicitor's office, and 3 members of the news media who will address you now. After all 3 speak, they will answer questions from the podium. They will not be available for interviews after the press conference ends because they have to write their stories too. First, Jeffrey Collins from the Associated Press.
Good evening. I'm Collins with the Associated Press. That's JEFFREYCOLLINS. And I'm just going to kind of walk through what I saw from starting at 6 o'clock when the curtain opened. Marion Bowman was laying out on the table. His arms were strapped down. He was laying from left to right. His head is on the right side. And he turned his head when the curtain opened, looked at his attorney, Boyd Young, who was in the witness room with us. At that point, he and Mr. Young exchanged some kind of greeting. Marion Bowman told him he was okay, and then Mr. Young stood up and started to read Mr. Bowman's final statement. It was about 3 minutes long. During the final statement, Marion Bowman, after he exchanged that greeting, started looking at the ceiling and closed his eyes, maybe opened them once or twice as the statement was being read. Once Mr. Boyd Young stopped reading the statement, once it was finished, you could see that Marion Bowman didn't move at that point. At that point, his breathing became a little more heavy. He is a large man, and so it was hard to see his chest movements, but after the statement finished, you could see there was chest movements. You could see he was breathing fairly heavily. You could see him puffing out his lips during his exhales, kind of like that. That lasted less than a minute. You could tell his head was bobbing up and down as he breathed a little bit. I think about 6:07, so that would have been about 2 minutes after the statement ended, or a little longer than that. I didn't see any other movements. There were no more movements and no activity until 6:26 when the doctor came in. She put her stethoscope on his chest and a hand on his neck, and she sat there for nearly a minute. And when she was finished, she did a little pat on his chest and backed away, and they announced him dead at 6:27. The sentence had been carried out then. I'm going to turn it over to Ann, see if she wants to add anything.
Hi, I'm Ann Emerson with WCIV Channel 4 out of Charleston, and I think Jeffrey gave us a very good glimpse into what happened today. When we arrived in that room, the curtain is closed, so it is just the witnesses, the solicitors, representative who was there, Boyd Young, someone from SLED, and Christy Shane, who's in there, along with the 3 of us. While we were sitting there, we waited for the curtain to open. The curtain opened pretty quickly after we got in there, after 6 o'clock. And as he said, that's when Boyd was able to read the statement that had been provided, which was quite lengthy. And those last words from Marion Bowman, we did have an opportunity to see Mr. Bowman look at his attorney a couple of times and mouth some words. I think he said something as well afterwards to Boyd, but we couldn't see what he was exactly saying. We could just tell there was something going on. And then also we saw his eyes looking around. I saw him looking sort of more at his lawyer, and then possibly around at the rest of the people in the room. As far as the timing goes, I think that's exactly what was going on as well. I don't think there were any differences in what we saw as far as the breathing and the respirations that were going on with Mr. Bowman. That was pretty much right at that time. So I think that's all I would really add to it, was what happened at the beginning in that room. And I'm going to hand it over to the other media witness here, Skylar.
I'm Skylar Laird. That's SKYLARLAIRD. I'm a reporter with the South Carolina Daily Gazette. I don't really have much to add. I think they pretty much covered it. We walked into the room. The curtain was closed. They drew it aside right at 6 p.m. And his attorney, Boyd Young, got up to read the last statement. Right before that, Marion Bowman seemed to turn his head and nod at his attorney. And they had a little exchange there. He read the statement for about 3 minutes and then sat back down. Marion Bowman looked at him again, facing the ceiling, mostly with his eyes closed while the statement was being read. He looked back at his attorney. They had another exchange that we couldn't quite hear. And then the execution began at 6:04. Like Jeffrey said, there was about a minute where he was breathing heavier. You could see him puffing out his lips and puffing out his cheeks a little bit. And then after that, it was shallower breathing. You could still see some chest movements. That all stopped around 6:06. And then there was no movement after that until 6:26, when the doctor came into the room and looked at him for about a minute with a stethoscope to his chest, and then declared him dead at 6:27, which was when it ended.
Open it up if anybody has any questions. Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you. Jeffrey, was there anything different about this execution from any of the others that you have witnessed?
I guess, and then one thing that I realized after I spoke that I didn't mention is the witnesses. There was one witness from the solicitor's office, Kelly LeBlanc. Actually, Boyd Young introduced himself to her as he came in the room, so I don't know the spelling of her name, but she did say she was Kelly LeBlanc. And that was the only two witnesses outside of Christy Shane and a sled agent that are always usually in there. Boyd Young, he did appear to have some kind of tears or something in his eyes. He wiped his eyes several times throughout the 20 minutes that the execution was ongoing. It was not much different than the other ones I've seen. In fact, probably the breathing was a little... we're only talking seconds here. It was probably seconds less of the breathing process before the breathing stopped. But outside of that, we did get in the room when the curtain opened, which we hadn't done before. They've changed that. Appreciated that. But other than that, it was similar to the last two.
And sorry, just briefly, was it the same as the last one with the IV line running to the hole in the wall from his arm?
Yes, and I'll explain it again in case there are folks that hadn't been here before. So the curtain opens and the inmate is laying. His head is here to my right, and his legs are to my left. He's covered with a sheet in a green jumpsuit, and he's also strapped in. There's almost like a car seat belt system that's strapping him in, and his arms, his fists or his hands are taped. They're out to his side like this, and they're taped down. There's IV lines that run from behind his head. There's a brick wall, and they run through a little metal part that you can't see anything except for the lines coming through, and they go towards his body, towards his outstretched arms. And there's 3 people in the room. There's 3 prison employees. There's 2 off to the left at his feet, and then there's one that stands close to his chest, right up against the curtain, that's blocking us from seeing where the firing squad chair is and where the electric chair is. And so that's the setup of the room. And again, like I said, they're covered with a sheet. And so, yeah, it was similar to the last time. Go ahead. Oh, I forget that one there.
Hi, you said it looked like there might have been some communication between him and his attorney. Do you have any idea what they might have said, or can you explain any more about what that was like?
I think if anything, I think it was a greeting, absolutely, just acknowledgement more than anything else. We were thinking that he said something to the effect of, okay, or I'm okay. We're not really sure exactly what those words are because there is this glass partition between us, so we can't hear things very well, but we can sort of see that he was acknowledging in a really friendly way, for sure. And there was certainly a lot of, or a fair amount of emotion coming from his lawyer as well, to acknowledge that as well. And as you read the messaging that he sent out for his last statement, you'll see why, because he still was maintaining his innocence in that final statement as it was being read.
The first words of his final statement was, "I did not kill Candy Martin." So, yeah, he maintained his innocence up until that.
Christy,
Any other question? Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
this is a question for you. Did you already say his last meal?
I did not. That's what I was about to do. Good question. Mr. Bowman's last meal, as requested, was fried seafood, including shrimp, fish, and oysters, chicken wings and chicken tenders, onion rings, banana pudding, German chocolate cake, cranberry juice, and pineapple juice. It was served Wednesday evening at his request. Other questions?
So he hasn't eaten since Wednesday?
Yeah, oh, yes, but this is his,
That was his final?
yes, right. I mean, yes, he's eaten since Wednesday. Other questions? The press area and building will be open for the next hour and will close after that. So we're asking everyone's patience and finishing your stories and honoring that so everyone can make it home safely. We'll call that 8 o'clock. The building will close. Other questions before we shut things down? Yes.
It seemed like there was some time that passed between when he was lying still and when the doctor came in. I have a question for you. How does the doctor know when to come in so you can get a timeline of how long the process took?
I'm not really sure I understand your question.
If I'm reporting on the length, the duration of the execution, I'd like to know how that was determined.
Well, he was pronounced dead at 6:27. Other questions? Thank you.
Sorry, I have
Wait.
one question.
Sure.
How many doses were administered?
We followed our protocol.
So was it was one then?
We followed our protocol, and that is,
Can you elaborate on what the
disclosed.
protocol is then?
our protocol is not disclosed, but in our legal filings, we have said that it mirrors the Federal Bureau of Prisons protocol.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.